Sponsored by Squarespace. Welcome back, everybody. Today, it's actually a serious story because the gold rush is over and a whole generation of studios are actually dying out. And I'm not talking about newbies with experience or AAAs that are dying under their own bloat. I'm talking about, say, the creator of Mass Effect. As an example, lots of tenured, experienced developers full of war stories who have now seen their projects go wrong. And even more painfully, these are the very veterans who are doing what they're doing because they grew tired of AAA bloat. They didn't want to be forced into mass people management roles and that sort of thing. A whole bunch of money flooded into games, and it was always going to burst. Some of my sources in and around this area have been telling me this is going to burst, and now, today, we're actually seeing it happen. So this is a big one, an important one, and one that we're going to put in context, of course supported by today's sponsor, who are of course Squarespace, and they are always getting better. So they of course have got the easy-to-use site builder, the award-winning templates, but lately, so much more. Design Intelligence is their mix of tools that help you access their 20 years of design experience just immediately as you're building. It starts with Blueprint AI, and that gives you a few questions. You answer those questions, and then you use their interactive design system. And as you move through that, it's just moving from flow to flow. It's super easy, and that has you building your own template. Now, of course, they keep you right with designer-picked fonts, color palettes, all matched, of course, to your aesthetic and your goals. And what this means is that if you've been overwhelmed in the past or you just want to start real quick with all your bases covered, this feature set's made for you. Now, their core platform is, of course, also growing as well. They've got native video support, so you can have a gorgeous player, you can have a video gallery layout, all interoperable with their e-commerce tools as well. Whenever I needed sites, Squarespace was my first port of call because they make it easy. So you can get started today at squarespace.com/Bellular News. You can check out Design Intelligence, have some fun, use Blueprint to build your website, and when you're ready to send it live, use code Bellular News for 10% off your first purchase of a site or domain. Today begins with two recent examples because November 24 gave us a perfect illustration of what's going on. These are two studios led by ex-Bioware staff who tried to break free from the EA machine. One is from Casey Hudson, the director of Knights of the Old Republic, a renowned game, Mass Effect, a renowned franchise, and he founded Humanoid Origins in 2021. And it's not like they just stayed in silent mode all the time. No, by March 22 they had a concept. Just a few months later in June they had a playable prototype and a trademark filing for Space Age Parallax. And looking at that art, we can all imagine another sci-fi RPG made by the Mass Effect people, but without the insane financially motivated rush of EA that, as an example, led to Mass Effect 3 being made in something insane like only 18 months. Then there's Worlds Untold. That's our second studio. Mac Walters, 20-year veteran and the lead writer and creative across Mass Effect, helmed that venture. NetEase set them up with money, with funding, and they shared a mission with Humanoid Origins to also make a AAA sci-fi adventure game. And the thing with these studios is, they're experienced teams, likely took the cream of the crop, let's be real, but it's not like they're making something completely new and different outside of their wheelhouse. No, one of the reasons why Baldur's Gate was so good is because that company's been making CRPGs for a long, long time. They've got quite good at it. Here, we have sci-fi RPGs made by sci-fi RPG people. But of course, within the space of a single week, both companies announced that they're dead. Here's how it went down for the two studios. So November 24 saw Casey Hudson's Unknown Worlds announce that their backers had pulled out of the project, and a similar fate befell Worlds Untold. They announced that they have actually paused operations because they need a new partner, which I think rather obviously means that NetEase just pulled their funding away. We don't really have massive details there, and to some of us it could be a bit surprising or worrying. You might even again look at Baldur's Gate and say, those are pretty strong tailwinds for role-playing games. Why is this sort of thing not investable? So that's those two studios. Now I'm going to get to other studios that are collapsing and burning and all of that horrible stuff pretty shortly. The thing is though, the problems run a little bit deeper than that, because the whole industry is an ecosystem, and one of the things that we want from that ecosystem is, of course, good AAA games every now and then. And that's the thing, fostering AAA talent is actually really hard. Most recently, the cream of the crop often left because there was a really hot funding environment in and around COVID. That's why you've got studios like the ones I just mentioned, or Greg Street's fantastic Pixel Castle. So many of the best people industry-wide left their big companies. That meant it was pretty damn hard for talent to be incubated and fostered and mentored in companies as they dealt with an extremely competitive environment. And that means that many of those AAA teams had to deal with the cream of the crop leaving and all of the fallout that would happen from that. COVID was the time it saw gargantuan levels of investment and complete market distortion. As an example, World of Warcraft's fastest selling expansion ever was arguably its worst, Shadowlands. So be it World of Warcraft must be a good game, numbers go up. Peloton stock or any countless examples, we saw lines go up. And if you were sane, you knew that it was transitory, that it was a flash in the pan. But there's a problem with that, and it's a really bad problem because it's one that leaves the sane people penniless. There's a very powerful saying, here it goes, the market will stay irrational longer than you'll stay solvent. So that's the thing, even if you're sane and you think this is all going in the wrong direction, if you act on that immediately, you might be punished. And if you don't hop onto the trend, you're going to look really bad because there's everybody else out there hoovering up some of those delicious, tasty gains. Now, in doing this video, I've got a real problem. There are so many studios that fit into this bucket that I just really would bore you if I named them all. To do just a few, well, the following vets got studios. You got Yakuza Man, Dino Crisis Man, Treyarch COD Man, Rabid Man, Witcher 3 Man. Studios absolutely everywhere. I am barely scratching the surface. Of course, you've got all of the ex-Blizzard ones. But to bring it back to Bioware, there's another Bioware studio. It's called Inflexion Games and was founded by Bioware veteran Aaron Flynn. And unlike most of the studios in today's video, they actually have a video game that you can buy and play. It's called Nightingale, 66% review on Steam from 13,200 ratings, but the recents are a far healthier 83%. It goes for $24.99 and it's an early access survival game. But it's one that was not able to save the company. So Aaron founded the company in 2021, 2022 saw them be acquired by Tencent because that was just the time of gobble everything up, games are going to the moon. By 2023, they had 140 staff, but 2024 was not kind. The game's launch was rough, and it is fantastic that they put in the work, and now that is flipped to 83%, but sentiment doesn't pay bills. Inflexion would soon close their UK office, they laid off 65 people, and now they're down to just 58 people, so maybe some others left, maybe there were further cuts. But it's quite rough, and it's also not even the half of it. Enter ProbablyMonsters. They're the ex-Bungie CEO-founded umbrella company that's basically meant to find talent, incubate teams, and then either sell those teams to other companies or run them. And you'll know their big success. It's Concord. And I mean it. It was a success for them. You may say, hang on, you've just lost your marbles. But no, for them, Concord was a success because they sold the studio and the IP to Sony. Sony were the people who did all the expensive stuff, right? That's the business model, working as usual. Sucks for Sony that it didn't pan out in the end. But even if that was a financial win, I don't think the rest of ProbablyMonsters is doing that well. So they got themselves a cool $250 million investment through to like 2021. It was led by a private equity firm with money coming from a real estate investor. So that was a bit weird for a real estate firm to get involved. But anyway, not everything's went well. First, they canned a whole studio and project that was codenamed Cauldron. Then in November 2024, a game developer reported that Battle Barge, which was another one of their studios, saw around 50 layoffs and a canned project. And that's just one example of so many. Everybody went mad. Ubisoft went mad. The venture capitalists went mad. Even down to the likes of Paradox, who of course burned their reputation and utterly mishandled their attempts at just about everything, say including The Sims. But times have changed. We're now in an era where debt is no longer cheap and games are struggling. Indeed, market-wide game sales are down massively, and if it wasn't for Helldivers 2 and EA College Football, the 2024 sales slump would look even worse than it already does, and it looks quite bad. But it's not just the soft sales that are worrying. You see, money is money. It doesn't have to be spent or invested in video games. If AI and robots are the next big thing, well, a lot of the money is going to go towards those. The era of it being video games plus metaverse, which was the big investment trend of the COVID era, well, it's just that, an era. We're past it. So it's hardly surprising that, say, NetEase are pulling money out of studios. Great example being Worlds Untold, that Bioware studio that has now lost out. Same goes for, say, Oka Studios. They released Visions of Mana, and while they were releasing it, they were being gutted because NetEase were divesting from Japan. What this basically means is the gold rush is firmly over. So many of these studios were propped up with cheap money, and it seems the investors got cold feet, did not want to play ball anymore, and that has led us to a particularly dangerous and worrisome set of circumstances. The silver lining to all of this is that the financial excesses that started off this decade and did so much damage, those actually have been punished. But the problem is the damage done is existential. It is damage to the ecosystem of the industry, and that's a problem because that's the ecosystem that produces our video games. Veterans took their chance when opportunity knocked and money was cheap, but then for the AAAs, it's been bad. The cuts have been gargantuan to the point where that's basically been the ongoing news story of the last year and a half. The jobs market is absolutely flooded with applicants. It is very hard to get a job in video games. Firms are not hiring like they used to, and indie funding, oh boy, that has just fallen to pieces. Broadly, risk appetite is just lower. So I would love to say that the bad things have been punished and it's a bit like a forest fire. Now we've got rich, fertile soil. No, this is more like an unsustainable monoculture that's just died and it's left behind barren soil. And the problem is, to us as customers, we'll see a bit of a knock in the games that we get. Maybe we'll get less games, but we're never going to know the games that we didn't get because thousands and thousands and thousands of developers no longer work in this industry, and dozens and dozens and dozens of companies no longer exist, and that's not even thinking about the ones that will not go on to be formed because people have left. And that is the damage that the excesses of the last few years has wrought upon our hobby. At the very least, you can tell it's a time for change, and one of the things that will be changing is a rotation away from the most expensive game development hubs on Earth, such as the United States, parts of Canada. And that's where this next video is interesting, because it details how Space Marine 2 was made for half the cost of Doom Eternal. So check it out next.